Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Jessica Rafuse from Microsoft and very excited about this conversation. At Microsoft, we believe that disability is a strength, and people who are neurodivergent at our company make our company better. They make our products better, they make the company culture better, website services, you name it. So we're looking for talent who are neurodiverse to come into the company. And I am very curious to hear what that means in the continent of Africa. And we've got some experts here with us who are going to share what the challenges are. We're going to talk about ways that employers can support. We're going to talk about ways that government plays a role in supporting people who are neurodivergent. So let's meet our panelists, shall we? And this is my first time meeting you all as well, so welcome. So nice to meet you. Do you want to start? Let's start on Nana. Does everybody have a microphone? Yeah, okay.
Should I begin? Yes?
Yeah, go ahead, Briana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Briana Gilmore. I am a white American woman. I'm tall with long, wavy blonde hair. I'm wearing a long dress with a floral pattern that's orange and green and black. I'm seated in a chair cross-legged, which is relevant to today's session, but I'll say why later. And I work as the head of global accessibility policy at Uber, as I believe I said, and I'm autistic and I have ADHD. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Lema. I am a black, petite African girl, mid-aged, dark-skinned, and I'm wearing an orange top with a black blazer and blue pants. I'm seated in a chair. So I am the founder of an organization called Autism Voice for Children, which what we do is really we educate and empower people on how best they can include autistic people in their organization, in their societies, and we start from home all the way to the workplace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jane Muiruri. I'm a black African woman. I've shaved my hair, so I'm bald. I'm of medium size. Yes, I'm not petite. I'm wearing a dark brown dress, a light brown jacket with cream shoes. I wear specs. I have a round face and a smile on it always. I'm a parent of 2 neurodivergent children. That's why I'm here, and a third one who's not neurodivergent. I'm currently the advisor and partner to iZola. iZola basically is an AI-powered app and system that delivers empathic therapeutic services to neurodivergent children, as well as a health assistant partner by the name of Saidi. Saidi starting with an X, but Saidi has evolved to even handle employment interviews and work support for neurodivergent people. Yeah.
Jambo, my name is Dr. Sylvia Moraa Mochabo Akinsiku. I am a female. I've put my hair up in black. It's a wig and it's curly, light-skinned. I'm wearing a black jacket with an afro detail and a mixed ombre dress with the sides in white, a dress that is seated. I am the founder of Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons Africa, an organization that champions for inclusion of persons with neurodevelopmental disabilities and their caregivers. I also serve at the National Council for Persons with Disabilities board here in Kenya, among others, and I sit at WHO, World Rehabilitation Alliance, representing the Neurodiverse and the African continent. And I'm glad to be here. On top of that, why I do all I do is because I'm a mother of 3 and 2 of my children are on the spectrum of autism, ADHD with the comorbid condition of epilepsy. Thank you.
How about this fantastic panel of brilliant ladies? All right, I thought we could start with some terminology, some definitions, and really looking for feedback from our panelists as well. First of all, we are all neurodiverse. Everyone is. So that's a term that we use for everyone. When we say neurodivergent, we mean folks that self-identify as thinking or feeling or navigating the world in a way that is different than expected. The autistic community loves that word autistic with pride, and so it's one to embrace, not one to shy away from. Any questions or feedback on any terms that we might want to add to that? Panelists, you all are the experts. Is that good? Okay.
Maybe inclusivity.
Inclusivity, that's fantastic.
Maybe the difference between neurodevelopmental disabilities and neurodiversity.
Ooh, tell. Do
Yes,
tell.
so we have under neurodevelopmental disabilities, it is wider, including cerebral palsy. We have the learning disabilities. We have, so it generally refers to brain development, the disabilities that we have that come about because of the brain development and lack of the full development of some sections and how it affects our daily interactions. So the difference between that and neurodiversity focuses on autism, learning challenges, ADHD, dyslexia, and learning disability.
Very helpful, thank you. Okay, let's get into it. I mentioned we're going to start with the challenges. So let's talk about the main challenges that are faced by individuals from the neurodiverse community in assessing and retaining employment opportunities. So specific to employment and specifically across African sectors. Let's start with Dr. Sylvia. Do you want to begin? Let's talk about some of the challenges.
All right. Employability in totality is one of the greatest challenges for us, especially as parents sitting here. If you notice, it's a female-led pageant, and 90% moms. So it's us mothers who are trying to just change the narrative because it's almost non-existent in the African continent. And why I say this is, first of all, just to give a bit of context and background, our education system, our health systems have not been inclusive enough for us in this day and age to actually have a workforce that is employable. Meaning the stigma, the cultural differences, and all the challenges that we are still facing or our children are facing, and they've been already left behind, makes it difficult for the job market to be ready for them. Why am I saying this? Is because in the job market, you find the minute you say accessibility, the default is we have a ramp, we're fully inclusive. That's the default setting. Let's call a spade a spade. When you come in and looking at maybe interviewing a dyslexic person who may read or have challenges with mathematics and you are expecting them to perform at par with the rest, they're not going to, of course, make it. Or an autistic individual walks in, they're fidgeting, they're rocking, that anxiety, there is change. You write them off immediately as not going through without giving them a chance. If they have challenges with communication, maybe they prefer their interview session to be behind in their comfort area, maybe at home digitally, and you say it has to be in person, and you're not making that flexibility. So you see, we're already cutting them off without even hearing that. When we get to the workplace and someone says, I prefer working XYZ hours, which is when they are best to give their best, you know, and it becomes, no, it's an 8 to 5 job. Of course, that makes it that they're not able to work. If they say the lighting is too much, when we're looking at the sensory integration accommodations that are required, you find that it's considered as too much expense at the cost of one person. And that means even if it's a genius, high-functioning autistic who's good at what it is that they do, cannot be able to thrive because we are not willing as employers to give them the opportunity. Or even in our education system, where we've not trained them with their life skills. I'm not good because we know social interaction is one of the greatest challenges. They don't interact, HR calls you and says, oh, you're not being a good sport, you're not working with others. Yet this is the default setting of an autistic person. It's one of the innate characters of who they are. So some of these small accommodations that are not your typical basic expectations and organizations being capable to just give that room for them to come, right? And also participate. We're already locking them out in very many ways. And even the stigma that's there, we all label someone who's just not being how everyone else expects them to be as being weird. And from that point, in fact, you see there is self-esteem, there is that acceptance, there is that working with the community. If you're already being alienated by just the nature of who you are, it's going to alienate you even from your performance. Right? And I was having a discussion with one of the autistic individuals, and they said, you are doubted before you're even given the opportunity. just by virtue of being neurodivergent. You're not being given the leeway to show your prowess and thrive. Everyone is already questioning, are you going to give us, are you going to be good enough just by virtue of having a neurodivergent? Yet that is actually one of the greatest assets a company can have, because neurodivergent individuals see what the rest of us do not see by virtue of how their brains work. So that is how I see as the challenges that we have. And apart from that, we do not even have policies that protect them. If I was to look at something simple as our 5% employability here in Kenya that we have, and it is in the Act, but who's following through? Who's ensuring that those ones who are being let go of their jobs because of their disability are being held accountable? When we are saying the 5%, are we talking about the government only? Are we bringing in also the private sector? Or is it whoever who feels like they can make it accessible or not? It should not be a choice. It should actually be something that we have in our policies and an accountability system put in place.
That's fantastic learnings. Thank you for sharing. I'm hearing a few things. So challenges are awareness, stigma. I'm hearing accommodations are a challenge. I too am a proud mama of a autistic ADHD 6-year-old. I learn more from him than anyone on the planet. He constantly teaches me, and honestly, that's my favorite way to learn, is to ask people with lived experience. So let's turn it over to Briana. Let's talk about your lived experience.
Sure, thank you. I just want to start by saying for the second year in a row, it's impossible to express my humility in even being an American invited to address you all today. I'm not here to talk about barriers to employment in the African context. I don't know them, but I am autistic, and autistic people are the same everywhere. My family and I know each other immediately as soon as we see each other. Everywhere in the world, we are all the same. I've also been relatively successful, so obviously I have like a great job with this incredible company. I was able to achieve a master's degree. I also, even though my autistic family always knows me, I pass as neurotypical. So I've decided at this point in my career that my position is really to be as vulnerable as possible in about my lived experience, because we often have to mask even the challenges that we go through. So I received a diagnosis very late in my life, in my 30s. I'm in my late 30s now. As a child, my behavior was so intolerable to my mother that at a very young age, I was forced into the psychiatric system. For over a decade, I was repeatedly misdiagnosed with increasingly severe psychiatric diagnoses, forced onto medication for almost 15 years, and then eventually, because none of that worked, because I did not have a psychiatric diagnosis, I was institutionalized. I was left from the home. Eventually, I was able to free myself, but this was only after repeated attempts to free myself through suicide. And then when I finally freed myself, right, I was able to work harder than everybody else to achieve, mostly because I never wanted to depend on somebody else who would ever abuse me, and I was successful in employment, right? But because I wasn't able to understand my needs and capacities, I was very vulnerable when I gained employment. I was repeatedly emotionally and sexually abused by employers and by managers. I had a very difficult time setting boundaries or knowing when to stop, because it's very difficult for autistic people to stop an activity until we are told to stop that activity. So I didn't recognize the signs of burnout, and in 2018, I started what would become a 4-year gap in my formal employment, the first year of which I laid in bed and failed to address an autoimmune disorder that I had acquired because of the stress. In my current role, it took me a year of working with a therapist to believe that I deserved an accommodation to work from home. It is a very difficult thing for autistic people to believe that we deserve rights and accommodations. We believe that we have to be just like everybody else because we're constantly told that we have to be. And even upon achieving this accommodation, what that means is I am isolated from my employees. I might lose opportunities for promotion, for collaborative work, for social inclusion, and it can further exacerbate health and other isolation issues. Okay, I will tell you, I am pretty much the most positive person you will ever meet. This is not a situation of telling you that these are insurmountable barriers. I address this because I am a person of incredible privilege, and my experience is the experience of so many autistic women in particular. This is not an exceptional experience. It is very, very common. And we do not often talk about the extent of these experiences. Inclusion is not just about making room for autistic people in a neurotypical world. I do not want to be neurotypical. That is never what inclusion will mean to me. The barrier really is about informing our systems and educating our systems to the point to really understand our lived experience. Yes, there's a whole list of ways that we can overcome very specific challenges in our environment, but until we really understand the lived experience of autistic people, we will never understand what's necessary in our culture change. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for showing us that the type of leadership vulnerability that you have is truly a strength, and the work that you're doing is making a difference, so thank you. Businesses, employers, are you listening? This one's for you. We're gonna switch over to talk specifically to our businesses, so I hope you're listening. And I just want to share a quick story about Microsoft, where we're seeing talent with disability is truly innovating in the company. How many folks have used Zoom or Google Meet or Teams from Microsoft? So we're using these platforms in order to engage in the workplace. And our neurodiverse and neurodivergent employees at Microsoft were doing the same. And they shared that it was difficult to know when to interject. I'm seeing nods or others experience, when do I interrupt? When is it my turn to talk? And so our neurodivergent employees got together. Our autistic adults said, hey, let's create a function, a feature within the technology, and they created the hand raise feature. So now, instead of being concerned about when do they interrupt and when do they interject, they click a button, they can raise their hand, and they can wait in line. That's the type of innovation that makes everyone better. Everyone uses this. So I just want to give kudos to that community who did a really great thing in creating a feature that everyone now benefits from. Okay. So this question is, how can employers? I've whet your appetite. You want to hire neurodivergent employees too. You want autistic and learning disabled employees in the company. How do you do it? How do employers create more inclusive and accommodating environments so that they can really embrace the strengths of the talent in the workplace and create that culture that keeps it going, building it into the fabric? Dr. Neema, let's start with you.
Thank you so much. So to be able to create a culture of inclusivity, I believe knowledge comes in first. We should be able to understand what exactly neurodiversity is, and we should be able to understand the details of neurodiversity. When we say someone is neurodiverse, how different are they from us? So the first thing will be educating ourselves at the company level, and I always believe this education should always be from top to bottom rather than from bottom up, because any change has to come from top for it to be sustainable. And then the second thing is we need to check our recruitment processes. We should be inclusive. So how are our job adverts? Because most of us, if we were to access any job, you'd have to, either Google or check something online to see, okay, who's looking for my skills. So how are these job adverts made? Things like, there's this phrase I usually always see, almost in all ads, people with good communication skills are advised to apply. So where does that put a neurodivergent person? Of course, it depends with the position, but really, do all job positions need good or excellent? It's actually excellent. That's the word they usually use. Excellent communication skills. Do they all really need that? Then you are told, send your CV and, a one page of an application letter. Are there other ways we could be able to do that? Can we do videos instead of written? Can we do audios instead of written applications? Then when it comes to the way the whole interview process is done, I remember the last time I did an interview, I had to enter a room of 10 people. These are people I don't know, and they were going to ask me questions. I am not neurodivergent, but I was anxious. Yeah. So you can imagine a person who is neurodivergent, and they're meeting these people, and they're supposed to show their best side because now they need to pass this interview. Are there other ways we can do that? Can we do video or phone interview? Can we do interview in a more relaxed, like what Dr. Sylvia has said? Can we do interviews in a more relaxed way? If my strength is not in verbal communication. Can I be given the actual skill that I'm being interviewed for to actually perform it so that you are able to gauge whether I'm going to be a good fit or not? If, for example, I'm a chef or a coder, can I be told to apply, cook a certain meal? And that becomes my interview, instead of telling me, how do you mix these ingredients? And, because that confuses a person who is on the spectrum. Then when it comes to even the process of the whole process of onboarding, the orientation, I don't know, sometimes you enter in an office and you're given a whole folder of forms to fill. You are supposed to, answer questions and all that. That's so overwhelming for people who are neurodivergent. Are there ways we could actually look into the whole hiring system and be able to accommodate these people? Then, of course, build a culture that is inclusive. We should be able to have places where people who are neurodivergent can meet and meet people who are neurotypical so that they are able to share their experiences and they are able to understand each other. The feedback mechanism. If I interview a person who's neurodivergent and for any reason they don't make it, I'll always have to go back and ask them, how do you think the whole process was? Because the whole idea is to improve. Okay? And this has to come both ways. So it is from that person to us and from us to the people who are neurodivergent. And for those who make it, we have to put a support system. You see, there are usually different models of employment. The competitive is what is really so high right now, because even as you heard in the morning plenary session, there are not enough jobs to go around. So, there's a lot of competition, even for the neurotypicals. So where are we putting the neurodivergence? So what we need is supportive job working environments. How can we support this so that we are able to pick that specific talent that these people have and use that for us to be able to gauge them, to gauge how good they are in that particular skill? Yeah? So we have to be very conscious when it comes to the hiring process, the culture of the organization, and also the support that we have to continuously give. Yeah? If we're in a meeting and we're discussing something, is it possible that we're able to share the minutes, go straight to the point, finish and stop these chats? Because most of these people are just not able to cope. Okay, most of us are not able to cope with chats, but most of people who are neurodivergent, they're like, okay, I'm getting worked up in this place, yeah? So we have to really look into the whole system and to the whole culture so that we're able to include the culture of neurodiversity. That we are at work, and if we are supposed to socialize, then I should be having a buddy. And this buddy should be someone I work with in the office who understands me as a person, who understands when I'm worked out, who understands when I'm overwhelmed, and who can comfortably be able to give me space when I need the space. Yeah? And then, of course, accommodation. The lighting, for example, in this room, I don't know how you feel, but the lighting, for example, for someone who has too much light. You see, the noise, the smells, the vibrations that these people usually pick that most of us will otherwise not pick. We should be able to always keep in mind the neurodivergent person if we are supposed to, want them in our workplaces and even retaining them in our workplaces.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads in the audience, folks who are agreeing with you. And a theme here is that we should not be expecting any employee that comes to the business to cover who they are, but rather the business has a role and a responsibility to play to create an environment where someone can bring their whole self to the workplace. So I'm going to go to Dr. Jane. Do you have more to share about that role, that responsibility of an employer? What's the job of the employer to create an inclusive space?
Let's start off right from the very beginning. For an employer to decide that they want to have inclusion, and I'm going to talk from the Kenyan space because that's the one I experience both as a parent and as an employee, is that inclusion doesn't start at recruitment. In this case, you cannot say now because it's become a law we have to employ 5% disabled people. I am just going to walk in and ask how many neurodivergent people can I hire. The inclusion part of it will start right at the investment by the employer, which should go back to understanding, is the education being provided, preparing them for the market that I have? If we are a market that is doing innovations, is the education being done, presenting that? So the responsibility of an employer should just go beyond hiring and retaining that employee. They should also invest a lot in accommodations, whether they are technical accommodations or they are human accommodations, space accommodations. I've been in this hotel for 2 days, and I've been watching my neurodivergent friends suffer through lighting, aircon. We've had enough conversations with the management of this place. So I'm imagining, we are guests, we are paying guests. What happens to your employees? Do you have any? Yeah, so it goes back down to that level. So invest on that. Ensure that the environment you have is as normal for the neurodivergent person as can be, without making it discriminatory or making others feel like you're making a different attitude for that. With neurodivergent, their unique needs are what you need to cultivate, because the moment you cultivate them, then they will be one of the best employees you'll ever have. Their loyalty and their commitment to tasks will be delivered that way. Then I've talked about starting early. Then we need to have proper knowledge of what neurodivergency is. Even looking around where we are, I've been in this conference and 90% of it has been about visually impaired, hearing impaired, physically impaired. Where is the neurodivergent person? Is it that we don't have data as employers? Or are we not bothered about it? Are we thinking it's very expensive to hire neurodivergent people, so we don't want to have that investment? This is how we interpret it in Kenya. The law requires us to hire 5% of disabled persons. In Kenya, disabled is visible disability. Yeah, so as long as we've hired a blind person to be the copier, or a guy on a wheelchair to deliver tea or whatever it is, and then we do not give them the opportunities to go for jobs that they can go for, with or without support. We want them in the routine, most basic, and we've met the basic minimum requirement of that law. So we need to move from just meeting the bare minimum of the written law to actually implementing it. We need to stop saying, okay, we have this policy on discrimination, we have this policy on disability, we have some of the best written policies. Now, can we implement it and ensure that we have implemented it to the best of it, not just the least of it? Then we need to have a culture of diversity and inclusion, right from the word go in any organization, and then have a way that we remove all our systemic problems, because we have systemic problems that have come over and over again that make it impossible for us to do that. And in this age and time, we have tech. Let's take the tech. I think in the introduction I talked about iZola, which then will start when they're kids. She has NeuroHub, which will give them the resources. There's Saidi, which will act as an assistant. So there is all that support to do all that. Yeah.
Thank you. I do want to go this direction. I want to talk about the resources that are available. This is not about charity. This is about hiring talent that's going to make your businesses better. So how do we make sure that that talent has the skills that a corporation, a business needs in order to be productive? What sort of vocational offerings are out there, Dr. Sylvia?
It is indeed a sad state. Let me just let you know, in Kenya, we only have 4 inclusive vocational institutions in the whole country. And according to them, inclusion, like she said, neurodiverse is not part of it. It's now that the conversation is starting. So we have this influx of young teens who have nowhere to go. And I know one of the DPOs did a trial with NITA where they trained both the parent and the child. But then because of that routine, the problem is who's going to hire the 2 of them so that the support is there. So that transition issue is still there. For us parents, we're still struggling in taking you back. Lack of the transition in the education space. We have a lot of ECDs where as parents we have set up, where you burn out and you cannot start building secondary schools, vocational centers. We have our curriculum, which is not being inclusive. We are forcing our children to still be doing beadwork, mat work, where we have machines doing that job. So how is my child sitting for 3 months to sell something for 5,000? Who's going to buy it when someone can spend that same 5,000 to buy a mat that is 5 times that side with finer detail? So we are not making them job ready in our systems of education. Our vocational system, the teachers are not equipped to. We do not have trainers who understand the complexity of neurodiversity so that they're able to work with them, make the accommodations that they have. If it's a child who has a comorbid condition of routine, they don't want the change. If they start at 7, it is 7. You're showing up because you say African timers. You're showing up at 10. You've thrown them off. How are they going to continue with that class when you've already thrown them off? If they want their spoon, it's supposed to be here, this one is supposed to be here for them to perform at best. For you, that's extra work. You would not bother. So you see, we're not giving them that accommodation even in their training to show them the soft skills. If someone is, what we forget is if persons who are like with OCD, they're the best in hospitality. Arrange the table like this, they will do it 20 times without, and that is joy for them. But you see, we do not, as our employers are not thinking that way. They're not harnessing those skills. If it's someone who's good in music, music schools are there for everyone else. I have been trying to find that for my child. I tell the school I want him to focus on music. But which music institution will also accommodate the neurodiversity? His challenges with socialization, his challenges with, like, I can only function for 5 minutes and I move and I need a break to go and scream and come back, you know, the sensory integration issues that are there. So that makes it very hard for us to finish this conversation when we have a gap in between from the training so that they're job ready and our curriculum is in place, our soft skills are taught so that they're able to be there and continue, and even just the employers asking the right questions, like she had said. Something as simple as, what accommodations should we have for you before you come in? How would you like your interview involving? We say nothing for us without us. It's not only for other disabilities. Even for the neurodiverse, they need that accommodation and that question to be asked.
Such a good way to wrap it up. Nothing about us without us. This is a big topic. There's a lot to explore and a lot to do. I was very privileged, so thank you for giving me the chance to ask you questions, but I know the audience has a lot more. Do we have time in the room to answer questions? I'm looking to enable. Do we have time for a couple questions? 4 minutes. We can do 4 minutes. All right, can we get a microphone over to the hand raised on the right side of the room, please?
Good afternoon, ladies. Let me introduce myself. I'm Karen Muiruri and I'm autistic. I work as a neurodiversity consultant at Ubongo International. You've touched a couple of things that, especially with the barriers and of course the transitioning. Yes, we do have a very big problem in matters transitioning, especially among autistics, especially in Africa. Let me just bring it onto the African context. I'm just gonna submit my comment here, which I'm gonna be very brief. Now, I'm gonna base this on what we're doing currently at Ubongo. We have a neurodiversity internship program where we train young autistic interns about job placement and soft skills training. Which brings me to my question. At Microsoft, do you offer such trainings for autistic transitioning adults? And if so, what are some of the accommodations that you would really consider, especially when it comes to maybe learning on a visual basis? I use that with my mentors because I also mentor them. I also teach them, especially using visual aids, because that is also a very important, reasonable accommodation. So, yeah, thank you.
Did you mean to ask that question of me or
yes,
of the
you?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm with Uber. And Jessica's with Microsoft.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So from Microsoft, right?
Yeah, from Microsoft. Yeah.
Sure.
So at Microsoft, we have a two-pronged approach. First is, how do we hire people who are neurodivergent into every aspect of the company? And that would be removing barriers to things like the job description or the website, making sure that they can directly ask questions to a human being. And we get a very high volume of applicants, so that human component is really important. The second is a programmatic effort, and I'll focus on one in particular. Our autism hiring program, which we now call our neurodiversity hiring program, is specifically targeting talent with neurodivergence. Specifically, we're looking for that talent. We bring that talent in for a week. It's a 5-day program where we allow them to meet with recruiters in advance. They can have some practice with the stressful, and like you were saying, it's stressful for everyone, the interview process. They can hear specifically from a hiring manager, here's what I'm looking for. This is how you complement a team, and they're learning those skills. They're already expected to have a high bar, of course, technical skills where the role is technical facing. So it is truly about what is the expectation at a big, scary company like Microsoft. I want to say that at the same time, we are training our hiring managers, and every single employee is required to take an accessibility training, because the burden is not alone on the candidate or the new hire or the employee who is neurodivergent. It's on everyone to create an inclusive space, and they may not know how to do that. I'm getting the time up sign. Okay, please come and find me afterwards, and please join me in thanking our panelists.